Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Page Turners with Nsuku. Today is yet another special day with another special guest. Today we have Morui Shoabi, who is the author of Color of My Tears, My Journey of Healing. And today we're just going to get to know more about her and the book and hopefully grip you to get this amazing, and I would even go so far as to say life changing book. Um, Morui Shoabi, affectionately known to me as Sis Shoabi, so I'm going to refer to her as Sis Shoabi because that's how I know her. Welcome to Page Turners.
Thank you, Suka. I was trying to pull a serious face, but clearly I'm failing. So thank you so much for the welcome and the invite. It's truly appreciated.
Thank you for coming. I'm sure the audience is going to learn so much. I've learned a lot from your book, and I'm just looking forward to us unpacking it. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So,
Mm-hmm.
Color of My Tears, Shwabi.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my question is, what is Color of My Tears about? I know your subtitle says My
Yeah.
Journey of Healing. Care to tell us a bit more?
Color of my tears. I think my tears are red, right? No, look, the idea was to play with the notion that tears have no color. So literally, you can be in the worst season of your life where you are crying a lot, and it's not gonna be written in your face. So that's what I was trying to reflect, to say that in all the season when we cry, no one necessarily sees until you call out for help. So that's why I
Mm,
said it's a color of my tears, because as well, I think the texture of tears is different depending on whether you are crying because of pain or whether because you're laughing. When
mm,
you laugh, tears come out because you're having so much fun, right? But those
mhm.
tears are very light compared to those tears of it's just a downpour. You're feeling a lot of pain and feeling like, oh my God, because then your your eyes, where's my mind, your eyes become red and big, and yeah, it's just a horrible scenario.
Okay, so that was what the title was seeking to convey. And
Yeah.
in terms of the actual content behind this title, what is the book really about, and what kind of story are you telling?
I wanted to tell a story. I hope I told a story of my journey of healing, because
Mm-hmm,
I know that a lot of people will write books about the pain they went through. But
mm-hmm,
then, to me, the point was, so many other people have suffered. But for me, the idea is not to share the story for the sake of telling my story. I wanted to take people on a journey of emotional healing so that they
mm-hmm,
can know that it's also possible, because it feels to me like now my quality of life is way better than when I was carrying that baggage of emotional trauma, history, etc. So that's the whole idea why I wanted to tell the story. This is why you would see, and I think it's something that a few friends of mine have been critical of me about, is that in some instances I didn't get into a lot of details. You know what I mean? Because for me, the focus wasn't so much the pain, but it was the process of healing. So I narrated the story of the pain to give you context of
okay.
why then the healing journey might have been difficult on a particular subject more than the other. I
Mm.
hope that makes sense. Yeah.
No, it makes sense. It really is
Mm.
a journey, isn't it's not just a pit stop in the realm of your pain, but how you
Yeah.
got where you are right now. But I mean,
Mm.
the whole concept of having a journey of healing means there was a period or an instance, if not instances of pain or of hurting.
Mm.
Do you care to maybe just touch base on what are some of the things that you felt you had to heal from or overcome in this journey of healing without getting into too much detail? But yeah, what are those things?
Look, the idea is not because I'm afraid to get into detail, right? But the idea is that I think in a book, there are two ways that you can narrate a story. You can either focus people on the actual pain, and then sometimes I think the actual pain itself can, become traumatic, because then with other people that might have gone through similar things, you might be triggering them, right? So I didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to do that, but I wanted for them to see themselves in my story while they see the process of healing. But anyway, so some of the things that I went through was, I think, I was molested at age 5. I was raped at age 9, and then it was the beatings, and then it was the verbal abuse. So it's a lot of things. But what I also wanted to focus on was that, so sometimes, and don't hear me to say that the actual abuse wasn't horrible, but I
Mm,
think sometimes what happens is that the difficulty in healing is the things that your mind created as a way of coping with that trauma that you went through. All right.
mm,
So when you are going through healing, you may find that the actual molestation was horrible, but the wrong conclusions that my mind then came to, and by the way, you come to these conclusions and you are not even aware of them. Okay. They are stored in your subconscious. But
mm,
I felt in my journey, those were some of the worst things that I had to overcome. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm trying to say, whether it's an escape mechanism or a coping mechanism, but whatever ways that you formulate to deal with the situation that you have encountered, sometimes overcoming those ways can be more detrimental or more difficult than the
mm-hmm.
actual incident.
Mm. Oh wow,
Mm,
that's actually very profound. That it's
mhm,
really how
mhm.
our minds rationalize
Yeah,
situations and how that in
yeah.
itself can be a barrier to
Mm,
overcoming, yeah, the incident itself. Um,
mm,
so now we're getting to, okay, so we've talked about the pain, and now we're getting on to
mm,
this journey of healing. And without preempting too much, I know that there were some active steps that you took
mm.
to be intentional about your healing, and one of which is therapy. Um, can you tell us more about that in itself, and how that influenced your healing? But also, what are the other steps or encounters that you had that helped you to heal?
Yeah, okay. So okay, and you must feel free to stop me, because sometimes I feel like every time I answer you, I must put context to the actual answer. So if
No, the
I'm going
stage
to
is
say
yours.
where to before I go to America, you must just tell me. Okay. So so I think it's worth saying that my relationship with therapy started in my 20s, okay? Where
Hmm.
I went to a psychologist, but and even then I was not even going because of some of the things that happened in my childhood, because for some reason I had forgotten a lot of them. So they had not yet resurfaced to my conscious mind. So I think I was going because I was battling with depression, I was battling suicide, I was battling so many other things in my 20s, right? So then I
Mm-hmm.
would try and go to therapy, but I think I wasn't ready for healing, because then I
Mm-hmm.
would pay a psychologist for a whole hour, and all I will do is play mind games. When you are like a mouse running around, because I
Mm,
was, I wasn't trusting. So I was always trying to assess the psychologists. Could I trust them? How deep will they go? Can't I psychoanalyze them? So I was frustrating a lot of people, and then also wasting a lot of money. So
mm,
I would find that you would go for 3 sessions there and then stop and then go. So every time someone or a psychologist hit the nerve, you know what I mean? Because eventually, you have to get over your nonsense, right?
mm,
Yeah, so every time I did that, I found that the different psychologists then will hit a nerve, and then I would run away, only for some other issue to resurface a few months later, and then I will seek healing. But that didn't work, and eventually I stopped completely. And
mhm,
I think when I got born again, I genuinely assumed that a lot of the issues I dealt with, because when you get born again and you go through that process, I don't know if it happens to everyone. So first
yeah,
you get excited about being born again, and then I went through a process of mourning for so many things that I didn't have as a child, or that I lost as a child. So in my mind, I thought I had dealt with a lot of pain. Turns
Mm-hmm.
out I had not, because fast forward to a few years later, in my early 40s, a lot of the pain resurfaced. Eh?
Mm,
It resurfaced because I think I was at a funeral, and I met people that I had not seen since my childhood, and they triggered some of those memories that I had forgotten. And that was for me the key to getting healed. So in the process of getting healed, I used therapy, I used prayer, and I used a lot of journaling.
mhm,
But my journaling started as a result of therapy, because when I was in therapy, my therapist suggested that I journal a lot of my emotions, that I chronicle them, just to have or make meaning of them, to understand. Because remember, when you go through therapy, a lot is unpeeled, right? And
mhm,
when a lot is unpeeled, it feels like you are getting in you are getting to know yourself for the first time. Because sometimes, the pain that you go through creates itself as a persona. So when you see yourself through the things that you have suffered, okay, or
mhm,
through the experience that you have had. And you also see yourself through the coping mechanisms that you created. Now, when you go through healing and therapy, you soon discover that you meet things, or someone that you actually don't know.
mm. No, I think that's really profound, and I'm just thinking about you mentioned therapy and you mentioned prayer.
Mm-hmm,
I think we'll get to the point of how those two come together. But I
mm,
know that your first book was actually Invitation to Prayer. And
mm,
to quote a line from your current book, Color of My Tears, you say, I rely on prayer to keep myself sane. Prayer
mm,
sustained me when I was uncertain of who I was and did not understand what I felt half the time. So, can you
mm,
just elaborate a bit on the role of prayer in and of itself in that
mm.
journey of healing, and how practically that looked like for you as you were hurting but still holding on to prayer?
Yeah, I think, as I was saying, that it's go through healing, because remember, part of healing is dealing with the coping mechanisms that you may have created.
Mm-hmm.
And let me give you a practical example. So in my case, for instance, I had created personas. Okay.
Okay.
So let's say, for some reason, I needed to present a confident Shwabi who could deal with the world, because
Mm,
my career demanded that, my activism demanded that. So I created that personality, and that personality was much more confident. So it wasn't, I know in the book I said it looked like a multi personality disorder. So it's not a multi personality disorder in a clinical sense, because
okay.
it wasn't that I was switching unaware between the different
Mm,
personas. Do you know what I mean? But it
mhm,
was a persona, in a sense, like, when you pump yourself up, like, I can do this, I can do this. So then I would present this confident person who was unafraid of anything. But in actual fact, if you really looked through my life, I was scared. Okay. I was
okay.
really scared. So prayer helped me, especially with that particular thing, because I realized, like, depending who you were in my life, like, some people knew me as very confident, some people knew me as very arrogant, some people knew me as very extroverted, some people knew me as
Okay.
very introverted. So there was never a clear line of who is this person, right? And
Mm,
I think that was even reflected in my clothing, etc. So what prayer did for me was, um, like, one of the most pivotal lines that my therapist asked me was, "Who are you?" And I tell you, that threw a curveball in my life, because I was like, "Who am I really?" And I couldn't figure it out. And that question itself can be very frustrating, because you realize that you define yourself with the titles that you have achieved in life, but when you
Mhm.
leave those titles, who are you without them, and what is your character? Then what then made that question worse is if your character isn't consistent to the true you, but it is the characteristics that you have created, you created so that you can fit in different, social scenarios that you find yourself in, then it becomes difficult. So what prayer did for me
Mhm.
was to help me keep calm, to keep asking, God, because I think in that moment I realized that the only person that could help me to unearth who the true me was God, and he was the only one that can help me remove the fakeness. And the funny thing is, once you break the facade of confidence, the facade of this and this and this, then you realize that actually uh, you need to learn confidence again.
Mhm.
Because when you meet the true person, you don't know what then makes you confident. It feels like you have no right to be confident, because the confidence that was dabbled with cockiness or arrogance, because somehow that's what my personality learned, right? But
Mm.
then when I came to learning what is true confidence, and I mean godly confidence,
Mm.
properly, esteeming myself without becoming arrogant or prideful. So that was a journey. And for me, that journey needed prayer, a lot of prayer. So, and I promise you, it isn't the kind of reshashashashambara, that kind of prayer, but it's
Yeah.
it's like intimate prayer. Oh God, I'm lost. And sometimes it would be prayer through journaling. God,
Mm.
who is Mama Shobat? Like who am I really? When I remove, and every time my therapist would then challenge me to say, is that really you? Then I would go and pray and ask, is that really me? But then eventually, through that process of prayer, you learn to open up. Because the other thing that I learned is it's possible to suppress the true you in as much as you want to know the true you. Because the true you don't know that person. You know, you
Mhm.
know, you know Shwabi from a long time ago. You know the Shwabi that has bad habits, even though that
Mm.
person is horrible, has issues, but you know those issues and you are comfortable with them. So prayer, yeah, helped me through that process.
Wow, that's so beautiful. I recall a line from your book about one line prayers. How
Mm,
sometimes, you would struggle to get up, but you would just remember to pray your one line prayer, and it could literally
mm,
just be, God, carry me. I can't do this on my own or something.
yeah,
So I think, yeah, the reality that sometimes we can't do the the all
yeah,
night prayer kind of prayer. Sometimes yeah, I mean, sometimes you struggle to even pray for yourself, especially when you are hurting. But I think what
yeah.
you're alluding to is just that honesty and vulnerability in prayer.
Hmm.
Yeah, just opening yourself up to God, and I just love that. I guess
Mm,
let's now tackle that confluence of therapy and
mm,
prayer, and I think
mm,
there tends to be a bit of a stigma, and I can see that we are working as a body of Christ to break that stigma, that you can be
mm,
Christian and go for therapy and have it work for you, because it is not yeah, the two are not against each other necessarily. So
mm.
I want to know what is your opinion on that confluence, and yeah, what kind of understanding, or maybe let's say perspective, we should have as
Mhm.
Christians when it comes to therapy.
Look, for me, there's never been a contradiction, because
Mm.
if you like, as Christians, we believe that healing, all healing comes from God. Whether
Mhm.
you achieve your healing by going to a physical doctor or a physician, right?
Mhm.
Healing comes from God. So
Mhm.
I didn't see any contradiction in saying that, let's say I had emotional, not, no, let's not say, but when I had emotional issues, and
Yeah.
realizing that, look, I am coming across things that I cannot deal with on my
Mhm.
own. I didn't see any contradiction in then going to an expert in that matter. So
Yeah.
for me, going to a therapist who was qualified to help me was similar to saying, I've been praying for a headache and it's not healing. I'm going to see a physician so that I attend to it. Yeah.
Mm. Yes.
So I
Straight.
don't even understand why Christians find it difficult, because hey. it's healing.
It's healing, right? And
Yeah,
healing comes from God. No,
yeah.
true, definitely. And I think we've spoken now about your journey, your pain, and your healing, or rather certain things
Mm.
that contributed to your healing. I'm curious about now your relationship with those outside of you who may have been the source of the pain. And you having to also forgive them while you healed from your own hurt, but having to also forgive them. Was it a process of going back to say, hey, you hurt me, or was it actually having to forgive without even getting an apology? I'm saying this because there's probably somebody watching today who's struggling with forgiving somebody, and possibly that might be somebody who might never even ask for forgiveness. Can you just
Yeah.
touch on your journey in terms of forgiveness, but also yeah, how somebody like that could deal with it and walk that journey of forgiveness?
Look, I think it's different for each person. It
Mm-hmm.
goes without saying. But on my part, there were different levels. Okay. So let's say, for instance, I chose not to confront anyone. So every time you go into therapy to deal with emotional trauma, you would be given an opportunity to say that you could confront, your perpetrators. And I
Mm-hmm.
think if you go that route, then your therapist would then prepare you for what happens if you confront someone and they do not acknowledge that they actually violated you. But in my instance, um, what I struggle with is, what would that achieve? Do I want to hear them say, forgive me? Because it just felt like, to me, I would not take their request seriously.
Okay.
I don't know how to explain this, because it felt
Mm,
like, let's say, for instance, the uncle that molested me, raped me when I was 4 years old.
mm,
If he said to me, forgive me, what valid reason would he give me for violating me? I was never going to accept that reason. You know what I mean? I was never going to accept whatever he said. Okay.
mm,
And knowing the traditional society, I questioned whether he was going to say, I acknowledge that I violated you and I am sorry. Okay.
mm.
So in that instance, then I went through the process of forgiving him without confronting him.
Okay.
Okay. So that was a personal decision, because I wasn't sure that it would give me the satisfaction that I needed. Because, remember, when you confront someone who perpetrated you, it is better if that person acknowledges that, and it is better if someone says, "Yo, I truly hate you." So if someone is not going to truly acknowledge the depth of, the pain they caused you, I didn't want to confront them.
Mm,
And then the other thing was that, the boys that raped me, if you like, when I was 9 years old, they were 2 3 years older you know
mm,
so then I was like, again, I was confronted with the same thing.
mm,
These boys, would they truly acknowledge? So it was a lot of these things, and then other perpetrators were already late.
mm,
So like, and in fact, okay, it's wrong to say other perpetrators, but let's say other characters, such as, I had a lot of issues with my mom because I perceived that she had not protected me as much
mm,
as she should have.
mm,
But by the time I was dealing with my healing, she was already late. You know what I mean?
mm,
So a lot of it, and I think for me, if there was one person that I would have wanted a real conversation, it would have been her. So she wasn't available to do that. Excuse me. So it was those things. So then in that instance, I went through the process of forgiving them. And to say I forgave them does not mean that I approve of the violation that they did against me, or how much they violated me. But it
mm,
simply means I was giving myself permission to be free of their violation, so that I do not carry the stones of the heaviness while they have fun with their lives.
Mm.
Mm.
No, that's powerful, and I imagine it was not easy. Um, it was quite the process. But then, what advice then would you have for someone who is in that situation now, where whoever has hurt them cannot say I'm sorry, but they're still holding on to that hurt and they refuse to let it go? What's your sort of case for forgiveness for that person?
Look, for me, the case for forgiveness is it's about you. You see,
Mm-hmm,
the day I went and the first time I really decided to forgive my uncle,
mm-hmm,
and I think this was my first therapy session.
mm-hmm,
I went my first therapy session. I dealt with that rape molestation when I was 4, the rape of when I was 9, because I think to my adult life, I vaguely remembered the molestation. Okay.
mm-hmm,
But I didn't remember the rape. I had, and they say it's part of coping. I had forgotten it. So, one of the triggers was meeting the boys that raped me as a girl, right? So, I remember in that session, after dealing with the anger, dealing with the pain, confronting it, and what it has caused in me, the misconceptions that I then created about myself and about men and people in general. Then we
mm-hmm,
went through the question of, do you want to forgive these people? And then I can remember that I did not want to forgive them. And then this is the time, or a time when my therapist went through the concept of what forgiveness is, what it does, and how it
mm-hmm,
frees you, and because I think a lot of people refuse to forgive people because they are thinking, if I forgive my rapist, I'm giving them, but again, freedom to be one. I'm saying that what they did to me was valid, was good. No, 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 no.
mm-hmm,
To forgive someone, you are not saying what they did against you was okay and you are happy with it. But to forgive someone is to let go of the stone that is in you and saying that I'm setting them free. Therefore, I am setting myself free. Okay.
mm-hmm,
So for me, the case for forgiveness is that forgiveness is about you more than about your perpetrator. Because for as long as you are carrying unforgiveness, you are continuing the cycle of violating yourself. But now you're doing it against yourself. You know what I
mm.
mean? Because
Wow.
you are the one that is carrying the pain, the emotions, and every time someone does something. And by the way, remember that when you are violated like that, it's very difficult to trust.
Mm,
It's very difficult to trust. It's very difficult and more than anything, you fear men. And
mm,
whether that fear happens consciously or subconsciously, but it's there. Because in as much as you can meet a nice guy, there's always that thing back of the mind to say, I should be careful because this one can violate me. You see,
mm,
so when you get to the process of healing, then you can let go of realizing that you were raped by one person or by 5 people, but not every man is a rapist, and
mm,
not every uncle is an abuser. And that for me is the case for forgiveness. Because I can remember coming out of that therapy session, I felt like a boulder had been taken off my shoulders. I was
mm,
surprised that, my goodness, unforgiveness is this heavy. For the first time in 30 years or so of my life, I felt free.
mm.
I could sleep without, feeling a heavy weight weighing over me. So that for me is the case for forgiveness. It's for you. Do it.
A strong case indeed. Forgiveness is not about the other person, it is about you. And I guess as your book shows, it is also a process. It's not just
Yeah.
an overnight thing. Um,
Mm.
I mean, I feel like you know that I'm gonna ask about the John Legend song. I have to.
I feel like everyone asks about that song.
Have to. I feel like it is one of those like, okay, this is interesting. Yeah, can you tell us a bit about your encounter with the song All of Me and how you felt God was talking to you through it in your journey? Because yes.
Yeah. Look, I think as we were dealing with some of the coping mechanisms that I had created, the conclusions, like when you are violated, you learn wrong lessons, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as I was dealing with those conclusions and as I was dealing with those lessons, one
Mm,
of the lessons that I had subconsciously concluded was God loved every other person except me. And
mm,
it's people will say, but how's that possible? You were an intercessor who loved God, and you kept telling people that God loves them, and you always said God loves you. Yeah, I did it, but somewhere deep in my subconscious I didn't really believe it, because my
mm,
thinking was, if God loved me, he would have protected me. you know
mm,
if God loved me, all these things would not have happened. you know
yeah.
so, and funnily enough, the mind knows that there is Satan that brings, chaos and all that, and that in as much as God loves us, Satan comes, to steal, destroy, and what does the other word say, and kill.
Still kill, yeah, destroy.
Yeah. Okay. So what we then forget is that we live in a fallen world. Okay.
Mm,
And living in a fallen world does mean that the people that are supposed to nurture us, love us, can tend to be the very people that are abusive towards us. Okay.
mm,
And when especially with abuse or molestation by a loved one, you see,
mm-hmm,
when that happens, it makes you question the love of God, because the people that said they loved you, the people that were meant to protect you, then became the people that violated you. So that's
mm,
the reason. So I questioned a lot of um, God's love for me, right? And I
mm-hmm,
promise you, I can't tell you how many times people have told me in prayer that, look, when God loves you, and then I
mm-hmm.
would laugh, yeah, like, yeah, I know. I would say that because I was like, what's the big deal? I know. But what I did not know is that in my subconscious, I didn't believe that God loved me. And therefore, every action that I did was proof that I didn't believe that God loved me. Because, and don't ask me how I came to that conclusion. But one of the conclusions that I had to deal with was, I thought I was molested as a child because I was ugly, you know and ugly people
What?
no one loves. Yeah, I know. I don't know how I came to that conclusion, that ugly people, no one loves them and no one protects them. So that's the conclusion that I came to. So remember that in our tradition, an uncle is as good as a father.
Mm,
Okay. So my father died when I was young, and this is the uncle that was supposed to protect me. And then when he violates you, it's as good as your father violating you, right? And then now I come to God and I'm supposed to believe that He loves me. Like how? So
mm,
then it makes sense that I theoretically believed that He loved me, but in truth, I did not. So this
yeah.
one moment when we were dealing with one of these things in therapy, to say, my therapy, we were going through, how did I come to this conclusion? Where do they come from? What are they based? What's their basis? And how do we correct them? So the one time then I was just journaling and crying, because I was dealing with this pain of never being loved. Because, by the way,
Mm,
even though we don't always mourn when we go through pain, you mourn for everything that you lost. So in that particular time, I was mourning the innocence that I lost as a
mm,
4-year-old, realizing that I could never come to a place to say that I lost my virginity when I was 16, because I didn't make a choice, or about my virginity. That choice was made for me, and
mm,
that was painful, because then I could never be like those people that decided to keep themselves holy, or I mean, barraking, yeah, pure before God, or not, so
mm,
I was going through that moment, and it was truly an intimate session, and I was just crying and journaling and having those intimate conversation, where I'm really talking to God like He's sitting right here next to me. And
Mm,
that's when he started singing that song to me,
mhm,
and it just validated me, because what he was saying to me was that I love you unconditionally. Because
mhm,
then this insecurity is that you are ugly, you are what, I love you, what's and all. And
mm.
so for me, that became a love song from God to me. And I thought so much about, should I include it in the book? Should I not? Because I was thinking, religious people are gonna be saying like, so God sings love songs to you. But then, all music comes from God.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
so
I'm glad you included it. It was a refreshing just way of being reminded of God's love for us, you know.
yeah,
So
yeah.
no, thank you so much for sharing that bit of you with us in the book.
Mm,
I think now we can probably transition slowly into the writing process.
mm,
And just to, as a segue, to kind of ask you, what was that process like of writing the story? Because you had already gone through the journey of healing, and now you're sort of,
mm.
I mean, so to say, at the tail end, and you had to sort of relive that in the writing. Did you feel like you had to unearth other wounds in the process, or you felt like it was a seamless, process of just writing what has happened? Or was the writing process also an emotional process?
Actually, for me, writing was a healing process, because
Okay.
remember that I said my therapist said start a journal. So
Mm,
a lot of what I wrote about in the book were things that were coming through from my journal. I mean,
mm,
yes, I know there were things that I didn't include quite in the same detail, but a lot
mm-hmm,
of what I wrote about came from my journal. So in that sense, it was making me make sense of my journey. So sometimes remember that you don't even know that your thinking has evolved until you put it down. So when you journal, you are able to properly reflect. So then when I started writing the book, I think it was towards the tail end of my therapy.
mm-hmm,
um and then I was just excited to put down the things. But it was also something that came as an inspiration from God. So I didn't just decide that I want to write. you know, I
mm-hmm,
was journaling, I was writing, but that for me was always for me. It was never to be shared with the world. And then God inspired me to write it, and then I was like, but God, so many books about people going through difficult stuff have been written. What would be the difference?
mm,
And I think one of the, if you know anyone who's had a history of emotional trauma, you would know one of the worst things is to come into a group of similar people and you start throwing pity parties. I
mm,
hate those, because sometimes you do that. I was whatever as well. I was raped as well. But what I found that does, it affirms you staying as a victim more than
mm,
help you overcome it. I'm not, by the way, I'm not saying that people shouldn't speak, but I'm saying sometimes when all you do is speak without going through, a way, going through a healing process, what you can do is begin to build a monument on your pain.
mm,
Because remember, it feels good to say, I'm not doing this because, like, I have issues of commitment because I was violated, right?
mm,
And it's profound and it's a good reason, and people forgive you and allow you with, yeah, shame. No, that one, shame. Alright? So
mm,
I was reluctant to share my story if that's what I was going to achieve. If
mhm,
all I was going to achieve was, shame, she went through so much, because I don't like people shaming me. It's not the same. Shaming me. Let me put it that
yeah,
way. I know there's no English word for that expression,
yeah,
but
get
yeah,
it.
I say shaming, it's a different meaning completely. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But I didn't want people going through shame. So that was not the point of me telling my story, right? So
mm,
then I was, God, okay, if I tell my story, I want to tell my story to affirm people, to say that it is okay to seek healing. It is okay to go to a therapist. It is
Mm,
okay to do whatever is necessary to get yourself to the place of complete healing.
mm.
Mm.
Wow. Powerful stuff. I think
Mm.
I personally believe that objective has been achieved because I don't walk away from the book feeling sorry for you necessarily. Although my heart hurts for the things that you've gone through, but I also walk
Mm.
away so grateful for the process that you've gone
Thank
through.
you.
And encouraged that even with the things that I've dealt with, that there's possible there's the possibility of healing. And there's
Yeah.
just that hope that the book builds. And so I encourage everyone to go get the book if you really feel that the
Thank
things that have been spoken about thus far resonate with you.
you.
So now let's talk about the actual process of, whether it's putting pen to paper or fingers to the keyboard to write the book. How did you
Yeah.
approach that? We had Miracle previously, and he had brainstormed practically through his YouTube channel and just put things together. With you,
Mm.
you mentioned your journal. Did you have an outline? How did you sort of approach the putting it
Yeah.
to become what I have in my hands right now?
Look, in I've always written, and in my 20s, early 20s, I used to think, just write.
Hmm.
Write and you will get there. It doesn't matter how you get there, you will get there. But I think as an older person, I value planning. Okay.
Okay.
And more than anything, I value planning because once you know what is the goal of my book, what do I want to achieve with it, in
Hmm.
that sense you set parameters for yourself. Okay, so
Okay.
I do that. I plan and I start with saying, what do I want to achieve, and then how do I want to achieve it. So I plan out the chapters to say, okay, I'm gonna have 10 chapters and I'm gonna write about this. But after I have done that, I don't allow my plan to constrict me. Okay,
Okay.
so in a sense that if I write and then I discover that what I have written here gives birth to another chapter, um, I will consider that chapter, especially if it still follows the intention of my heart. So if my
Okay.
intention is to write about healing and I discover that, oh, if I include that chapter, it's going to edify this and it's going to
Mm.
help. So I do that. A lot of people say planning constricts you. I don't believe so. I think it
Mm.
helps you. And then after I've put down my plan, I I'd advise this to people. Then write every day and don't write according to what inspires you. Don't go from chapter 1 and then write chapter 10. That
Hmm.
will affect your flow. So if you are on chapter 1, write chapter 1. Okay? So if for instance while you are writing chapter 1, ideas come, and then these ideas that come are for chapter 10, go to chapter 10, jot them down, and then come back to chapter 1.
Okay.
Okay? And that's the discipline every author has to have, because if you write per inspiration, you will never finish your book,
Mm.
because you can go for days or months without having the inspiration. So writing isn't about the inspiration, it is about the discipline.
The discipline.
Mm.
Great. I was actually going to ask you about writer's block, but I think you've sort of tackled it in that it's not just about waiting until the zone or the
Yeah,
inspiration comes, but you build up that discipline to keep writing.
yeah.
I wonder though if you did face any block of some kind or a brick wall, you didn't know how to phrase something. How did you overcome that?
Look, I don't think you, if you have a discipline of writing every day, you have a writer's block per se. But you
Hmm.
may feel like when you write another chapter, a certain chapter,
Hmm.
the excitement might not be there. So let's say you start with chapter 1 and it's
Hmm.
exciting and it's powerful, but you go to chapter 2 and it's dry and brittle. Okay,
Hmm.
so my method is, even when it's dry and brittle, write anyway. Okay, because you are pushing yourself to put, because you know what you want to say, so say
Mm.
it, even though the words don't sound inspiring or exciting. Right. because then one day you will be writing chapter 6, and suddenly the how of putting chapter 2 would come. Then
Mm,
go back to chapter 2 and do that. And then once you are done, go back to chapter 6. You see? That's how you deal with that. But if you write every day, then you make writing a habit. And
mm,
the need to write will propel you to write regardless of whatever blocks you feel.
mm. Yeah, no, I that was a word for me.
Mm,
Definitely to write every day and build up that discipline. Because I think
yeah,
sometimes we want to take things in bulk and just think, okay, today I'll write and then I'll write again next week in a chunk. But rather, if you build up the discipline, then the habit that you actually build will in itself create inertia and start writing. So definitely
true.
will jot that down. I hope people are taking notes. And as we wind down, I think I probably have like one or two more questions. I think
Mm-hmm.
the question is, okay, so what's next for Morui? What's next? Is it
Yeah.
another book? Is it a course? Is it, or you're still, thinking, yeah, what do you think comes either directly from the book or just in your own, yeah, life, something that people can keep a lookout for?
Look, right now, what I'm doing is I am doing emotional wellness training, if you like.
Okay.
And to say emotional wellness, I'm putting it so nicely. I call it healing stream, and that for me is a process of just explaining what is pain and why people need to deal with it, and some
Mm,
of the impacts that it you may have on your life. So I do a lot of these for believers, so
mm,
it's not therapy in itself, but it is something that introduces people to the potential of therapy, the potential of seeking their healing, because I
okay.
feel like a lot of people go around and they pretend they don't have pain, but then
Mm,
you listen to what they hear, you listen to what they react, or you see how they react to things, and you think, there's
there's
an
some.
issue there. So
Mm,
so so I do a lot of that training. I actually wanted to do a formal course this year because I was so compelled in my spirit. But then
mm.
I didn't want to do it online. So
Yeah.
so I couldn't figure a way of doing it and doing it without, yeah, without the challenge of online. So yeah, so I will hopefully do it now that we are open. But I'm likely to only do it late November or early next year.
Okay.
And then I actually have, you would not believe it. I actually know the next 10 books that I want to write.
Oh, wow. I'm excited. I'm like, yes, more reading.
Yeah, well, whether I write them is another thing, but
No
there's
pressure,
a
but they're coming.
there's a book that I started last year, which I'm hoping that I will finish.
Okay.
I haven't set aside time to. I decided to stop because then there were a lot of challenges in my life and I couldn't really focus. But
Mhm.
the book is called Heart of Prayer,
Okay.
or the Heart of Intercession. If you like, my first book on prayer was 101 on prayer, just trying to
Mhm.
level the playing field, seeing that how we assume that people know, but they actually don't know. So I just wanted to demystify prayer and help people to know that prayer is it's actually an easy thing. And it's
Mm.
something that anyone can do, it doesn't require a lot. So the book this book, it's a level or two up. Okay, so
Okay.
now what I'm trying to say is, now that you understand the basics of prayer, here are the dimensions of prayer. These are the things that you need to know. So how do you become the type of person that prays and knows that your prayer will be answered. So I look at all those things. I look at praying for strategically. I look at praying for the nation. So I look at a lot of these big terms that people have about deep intercession. Look,
Mm.
my whole notion is to demystify a lot of prayer, but to
Ah,
just show them what we call deep intercession sometimes it's just practice and consistency. And I show then people the benefits of that and how that plays itself out. So that's what I do. So that's my second book. I do hope that I will start it again. I think things will ease up. I've had quite a hectic year. I think I will start it in November. But I think once I start it, I just need a month to finish because I was 50% there.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, awesome. I'm looking forward to the books. We are also
Yeah.
looking forward to having you back on Page Turner with so good to tell us more about your books. Um, yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that I know about you is that
Mm.
you're not only a writer, but you are a reader. You
Yeah.
read a lot.
Yeah. I read
So
a lot.
I know this is going to be a very tough question for you, but can you give any book recommendations? Maybe say your top three or top five, if you like, books that you think somebody needs to go, read.
No, I feel like that's a trap.
I know it's tough for you, especially because you read such a vast range of books. But maybe let's talk about something. I actually don't want to constrain it to just the topic of your book because you've given me some
Yeah.
awesome book recommendations that I would not have picked up and I actually enjoyed. So let's not say your top in terms of the best books you've ever read, but what's
Mm.
coming to your mind right now that you think people should read?
Look, I have few books that are like for me the best books, I think.
Mm,
Okay.
okay.
And let's say not the best book out of all the books I've read, but let's say the best books that come to mind. Shall we say it that
Okay.
way? The best books
Yeah,
that come
let's
to
put it
mind.
like that.
So I think in terms of autobiographies, I would say Barack Obama,
Mm,
Dreams from My Father, and The Audacity of Hope. Okay, I know that you have lovingly given me the latest.
I was gonna ask, I'm like, I feel like that one should be there too.
The latest book, but okay,
Yes.
I'm coming. I'm coming.
Okay.
Um, but I feel like for me, he made me fall in love with how he writes and how he sees
Mm.
and how his perspective. So those two books, okay, and I know that it's the same author. That's kind of boring. Okay, so let's mention in terms of the US, let's also mention Condoleezza Rice. Okay, so
Okay.
her autobiography inspired me to no end. Okay. So yeah. All right. And then we come to I read a lot of fiction and people don't know this, right? So in terms of fiction, I either read African fiction or Christian fiction.
Mhm.
So Chimamanda, that book, Half of a Yellow Sun, that for
Yes,
me
beautiful
is
book.
her best work. I know people fall for Americana, yeah, but no. That
Yeah.
Half of a Yellow Sun for me was like, okay. And then Norma Violet, we need new names. Is am
Okay.
I calling that title correctly? Yeah, we need new names. We need
Mhm.
new names. I don't know if you know her, Norma Violet.
I've heard
I
of the
can't
book, so now it's on my list to read.
I can't remember her surname, but she's a brilliant writer. She's a Zimbabwean. So wow. Okay.
Mhm.
And then Kima Zeksimda.
Mhm.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I would say Zeksimda for me is Zeksimda because I think I've read 90% of his books.
Follow.
So so it's hard to pick up one. I
Okay.
think yeah, it's hard to pick up one. But him, um, I love, and I also like Fred Kumalo. Wow, that is the author that I never saw coming
Okay.
because I used to read his columns on Sunday Times, and I always loved his sense of humor. So when he began to write fiction, I didn't think he could pull it off. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
very difficult for journalists to, but oh my God, I love his work. And then of course there is the lady that always chills me to the bone.
Who's
What's
this
her
one?
name, by the way? The one that wrote come on. I think I even posted the book, and you told me you read the book because of the recommendation. Um
Is it
ah,
Natty?
is Sunyati, yes, but no, that's not who I'm talking
I'm
about.
trying to.
I'm talking about the one who wrote the Black Widow Society, the 30th Candle, what's her name? It's not Kapanomatla. Angela McCall.
Oh, the one who wrote the one about the Kula Society as well. Yes.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
That lady always chills me to the bone, okay? She catches me off guard. I mean, like, yo, okay, funny enough, she was also a journalist, so okay, yeah. But she's brilliant,
Yeah, that was a good book.
especially when with that Black Widow Society, for me, yay. Yeah, I was like, I actually believed her. It was so believable that when you read a book like that and then afterwards you keep looking. Hey, these ladies, don't look at them looking this sophisticated. They might be killers. So she had me thinking like that for a while. So
Mm.
I think for me, and Kopano Matla with her Facebook coconut, she was brilliant. So the ones that I'm calling authors, it's because I love a lot most of their books. Okay. So I'm not picking up one. And then there's also that guy who writes South African detective novels. Oh God, I'm so bad with remembering names. Please, beautiful authors, forgive me. It's not a disrespect of you. I love your works. Yeah, so I read a lot of African writers. I also read a lot of the African continent writers. So I know that I've only mentioned Chimamanda and Norma Violet, but there are a lot of other books that I love, and of course the classics. Bongungi, all those I love as well. And then there's also the lady that wrote Left to Tell. Now I forget her book, which is a story about the Rwandan genocide. And the one that says, what is it? A beautiful title, God, what does it say? God grew tired of us, or something like that.
Mm.
So if you read it, you would actually think that it's a book that disregards who God is, but it's not actually. It's I think it's a play on the assumption that people are going through the difficulty because God grew tired of them. Yeah, but yeah, it's a brilliant book. Those are just a few that I can think of right now.
I know they just a few because I know you probably would have also mentioned nervous conditions because I know you
Ah,
absolutely
yes.
love that book.
Yes. You probably know me. Yay. So if you're talking about books that I've read more than 10 times, that's one of them.
That's one of
Okay,
it.
so
I
yeah.
can
Oh,
understand.
yes. Pitsi Tangaremba. Yes, yes. So
Yes.
that's a book that I actually recommend to a lot of people learning or wanting to understand the issue of equality, the issue of discrimination in Africa and politics of how things can play themselves, especially
Mm,
in tradition, etc. Yeah. You
yeah.
know me.
Now I was like, I'm sure she's gonna say it eventually, but I caught you off guard, so
Yeah.
since you
No,
will
no, no.
forgive
It
you.
was a good. Yeah, you reminded me well. No, you're correct because it's one of the books that I can safely say I've read more than 10 times. I read from a young age. Like, I think the first time I read that book, I was in matric, and I keep enjoying it. It has layers. So
Mm,
for me, Nervous Conditions is like Bessie Hade's books. Whether I'm reading Maru or whether I'm
mm,
reading When the Clouds Gather. So
yeah,
I promise you, these are the books that I can read and read and read and still find like, wow.
yeah, no, definitely. I know the one you just mentioned, Maru and When Rain Clouds Gather. The copy I have, I got from you, so
Yeah, yeah.
it's very
So you
special
should
to
say you
me.
read it from me.
No, 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 you gave it to me lovingly, so
No, you read it from me, Nsuku. You read it from me.
Well, it's not coming back.
But
Thank you.
anyway, I'm happy because you read them, so I'm happy.
Yes, no, definitely.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. And I guess I know you also introduced me to Ted Dekker, who is
Yes,
also
yes, yes,
brilliant.
yes.
Yeah, I think we should actually have a segment where we just discuss some of our favorite books and what we learned from them. But
Yes, that'd be
it's
nice. Yeah.
yeah. But thank you so much for joining us. I think the one key question to answer
Mm.
now is how can people get a hold of you and how can people get a hold of your books? That is Color of My Tears and Invitation to Prayer, and the 10 that are still going to come when they eventually come. Yeah, how can people get in touch with you?
So I think people can get in touch with me on Facebook or on Instagram. On Facebook, I'm Morui Shoabi, and I think on Instagram and Twitter, I'm also Morui Shoabi. Or they
Mhm.
can email me at shwabi.kiko.co .za. Um, yeah, interact with me. I'm pretty open. I'm just reluctant to give my number on YouTube, but probably if we chat and I feel like, okay, you are not a stalker, I'll give you my number and we can chat
Okay.
more. Yeah, but get hold of my books. You can get them from if you are me like me and you like digital copies, you can get them from Amazon. If you're into physical copies, you can get them from takealot.com.
Okay, awesome. Now I'll definitely make sure we put the links to your social media names or handles rather in the description box so everybody can just follow you because
Mm,
I think we can all agree that we have a powerhouse on the show
mm,
today and there's so much more that we can learn. But thank you so much for coming. I've had so much fun.
mm,
We have gone to depths. We have spoken serious things that I believe are thought provoking even beyond the
mm,
time that we have now. But also it's yeah, also just got excited about reading, which is really what this channel is about, to encourage and to inspire the love for reading. So thank you
mm.
for putting a piece of yourself onto paper so we can read and learn from your journey, but also for coming and spending time with me. Thank you so, so much. I appreciate you.
Mm. No, I should say thank you, Suku, for hosting me and for a very well prepared interview. It was a lot of fun. And by the way, we should also tell your viewers that thank you that you edited my book. Yay,
Yes,
yay, yay.
yes,
So
you know.
Suku is very multi-talented. She's not just a reader or a beautiful presenter, but she's like a brilliant editor, poet, and all that. Yay.
Oh, thank you, thank
People are
you.
saying the most.
All right. No, thanks again. And with that, we will wrap up the show. For more
Mm,
author interviews, book reviews, book recommendations, and just my journey in this reading lane, please do subscribe and hit the notification button so you know when we've put up a video. And yeah, let's do this reading thing together. Thanks a lot. Have a lovely day further. Bye.
bye.